Hey, grade 11's last unit on grade 11 biology, the nervous system. And the nervous system consists of the brain, the spinal cord, and all the nerves and all the receptors within the body. The first thing we're going to talk about are neurons. And neurons are specialized cells that communicate with other cells. So when we get information in, whether it's me talking or the light, etc., that information is then relayed to the brain. We process that, and then we have some sort of reaction. We learn something or we say something, whatever that may be. That is all controlled by the nervous system and neurons. Now, neurons are electrochemical messages that are sent along a neuron. Neuron can be short or can be as long as a couple of feet. We have neurons that go from our spinal cord all the way down to our toes. Right, and there's many connect. In our brain, we have billions of neurons that all interconnect with each other. And things like memory are little electrical pathways that have been sort of mapped out electrically. And when you remember something, that pathway fires. When you're having a hard time remembering something, you know it's in there, but you just can't find that pathway. Okay, those are electrochemical messages, or what are also called nerve impulses or action potentials. If I make a noise, that noise goes in your ear, and action potential gets sent along our auditory nerve to our brain, and you probably know what that sound is because you have experience behind it. Okay, now there's three types of neurons. There's sensory neurons. They pick up information from our senses, our eyes, our ears, our nose, our skin. Anything that can trigger a sense will cause an action potential to fire from a sensory neuron. That message is then sent to the brain and spinal cord, and in the brain and spinal cord we have what are called interneurons. They're like little connectors. They relay messages between sensory and motor neurons, which we're going to talk about in a sec. And these are located in the brain and spinal cord. And the more experience that we have with information going in, the better that information gets relayed. That's why, like, if you're playing sports, say you're learning to throw a ball, the more times that you do that correctly, the more that pathway gets reinforced. Some people call that muscle memory. It's really not muscle memory, it is our nervous system memory. The more times you do it correctly, the better it gets. We estimate it's about 10,000 reps to really be considered an expert at something, which is a lot of reps. Okay, now those interneurons will send the message to the correct motor neuron. And motor neurons, think of motor as like movement, these send messages to muscles or glands. So if I'm going to throw a ball, right, I know I step with my foot, I bring my knee up, I look at the target, I lead with my elbow, I get to this position, I fire, and I follow through. There's lots more in between there. But the more times I do that, the more we get adept at sending that motor message to the correct muscles in the right order, and the more proficient we get at it. Okay, so sensory pickup, interneuron connect to the right motor neurons send messages to the right muscles or to glands. Like, let's say we get scared, our body will send a message to our adrenal glands to ramp up adrenaline, all right, that fight or flight hormone, all right, makes us better at doing things. Now, when we look at a neuron, it kind of has a one-directional movement, all right? Electricity would move in this way. We have these little connectors all through the body called dendrites, and dendrites pick up information like the sensory neurons. They send that to the cell body, which has a nucleus. The nucleus, like all cells, has the DNA and controls what the cell does. Then there's this long axon, okay? It can be a few inches, can be a few feet long. And the axon, the electricity comes along here through positive and negative charges, which I'll show you in a later video. And there's also an insulation wrapped around that axon. That is called Schwann cells, and they're made up of a fat, specialized fat called myelin. And myelin acts like the insulation on a cord, right? It keeps the electricity in. Now, if you guys have heard of multiple sclerosis, people start to lose their muscular ability. This myelin is getting eaten away. It's an autoimmune disorder that eats that myelin away, and electricity starts getting out, so it doesn't work as efficiently. But in normal or healthy people, that electricity stays in, and there's little spaces in between those Schwann cells called the nodes of Ranvier, and that allows the electricity to sort of jump from space to space, and it makes it much more speedy. We know axons that are myelinated not only work more efficiently, but they work much faster. All right, that's a big bonus. Now, when the electricity gets to the end of the axon, there's these little synaptic knobs, also called the axon terminal. These guys shoot out chemicals. One of those, they're called neurotransmitters. One of them is called acetylcholine. These neurotransmitters fire out into what's called the synapse, which is a tiny space between neurons. When these chemicals come out of the synapse, they then cause any axon that is touching them, sorry, not axon, any dendrite that is touching them to fire the next neuron. So neurons are connected electrically and then chemically to each other. And again, the speed at which our nervous system works is we're kind of born with it. Some athletes are just incredible athletes. Their nervous system just works faster than the average person. And they can just do things at such a speed that they seem like they're superhuman. But it really comes down to how efficient their neurons are and how quick they can fire. And we know with neurons, it's kind of like a gun. They either fire or they don't. There's no in between. There's no half firing. There's no sort of firing. A neuron either gets enough stimulus. A stimulus would be like a noise or a color or a sight to fire that neuron. All right. When it fires, it goes all the way across. And when these chemicals come out, whatever neurons are connected to it, they will then fire. That's the pathway that electricity and chemicals work to allow our nervous system to work. Okay? Take care. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.